I'm Jessica Ann Pressler, and you've tuned into Your Traitor Within, a podcast that exposes the brutal truths of healing, self-discovery, and breaking free from relentless patterns of self-sabotage. Laura Richards is an international podcaster, #1 best-selling author and speaker who has dedicated her life to empowering women around the world. Through her globally recognized podcast, That's Where I'm At, and her powerful best-selling book, Married to a Nice Guy, Getting Over Narcissistic Abuse, Laura courageously shares her personal journey of recovery from a 32-year marriage to a narcissist. Laura's mission is both clear and profound: to shine a light on narcissistic abuse and ensure that women everywhere know they are never alone in their struggles and that healing is not only possible, it's within their reach. Today, Laura continues this vital mission as she tells her own Traitor Within story. Her willingness to share her experiences with such vulnerability and insight is truly remarkable. And I am deeply honored to have her here with us. Laura, thank you for joining us on your Traitor Within podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you and to get to know you. We spent some time the other day speaking and getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of you for telling your story. It's hard to tell our story.
Yeah.
And I know it's important, not only for ourselves, of course, this can be somewhat cathartic, difficult, but cathartic.
Yes.
But we really help other people because not only do we help validate other people because they know they're not alone, but we take away the shame, hopefully, or we help take away the shame. I
Yeah.
think that telling our story is such a good way, which is why this podcast is what it is, because
Yes.
I think as we tell our Traitor Within stories, people could recognize theirs through our story. And
Mhm.
again, not know they're not alone. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for the work you're doing because I do believe that, shame is broken when we tell our stories. And I always thought it was just shame is broken in community, but my friend said, don't forget conversation. When we talk about it and bring it to the light, shame is broken. And then that's why helping others, we're talking about our stories and it helps people not feel alone. And it does, it breaks shame. Like you might still have those feelings for a while, but it will break shame. And that's why not talking about these things keeps no one safe except the abuser.
I do agree with that. And you know what? People say, oh, you shouldn't talk about other people. Well, this is how I stand with that.
Yeah.
Once they involved me in their story, it becomes my story.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Mhm.
I love that. And not to mention that, like when I'm telling my story, because I had plenty of people say that to me, like, you shouldn't talk about him, whatever. I'm like, "No, I'm just telling my side. And I'm
Mhm.
talking about narcissists in general.
Mhm.
And yes, do I sort of talk about what he did? Well, yeah, but I'm not attacking him. I'm not going after him. I'm going after all narcissists and abusers.
And you know what's interesting about a narcissist? Their stories are all similar. The way they
Oh
act is all the similar. And that's why what we do is so important because
yeah.
they're pretty simple, right?
Yes.
They thrive on narcissistic abuse. They have no empathy. They do whatever they want to get their needs met. They don't
Mhm.
consider someone else's needs. They live in a delusional world in order to,
Yeah.
again, have their needs met. And they're empty vessels and they,
Right.
and so, but hey,
Well, and this is the thing is that we've also been trained by them, if we've been in any kind of abuse, to not speak out, to not use our voice, to be quiet. That I know that was what I experienced, and I actually experienced that all my life. And so now I can't pick up a microphone fast enough. Like, you don't want me to talk about it? Well, I will talk about it.
well, let's just talk. Thank you for that opening about telling me that it's been something you have dealt with your whole life,
Yeah.
because that talks back to the traitor
Yes.
within. Because if you're repeating it, and I say repeating it once again, I have to state it is never your fault to be
Right.
abused. It is never
Right.
your fault to be a victim of manipulation. So I'll be
Right.
very clear as I say this to you. But the one thing, and the reason I named the traitor within, and the reason I do this is it empowers us to make a difference in our own lives.
Right.
Because it is not our fault to be abused, but if, for example, because it was for me that my traitor kept me in abusive
Right. Mhm.
relationships, then I have to learn to stop doing that. I have to learn to
Right.
repeat doing that. So, um,
It's great.
so
It's a great conversation to have.
yeah, Yeah, because we can't change another person, can we? We can only
No.
make changes in our own lives, in
Yeah.
ourselves, how we see the world, how we deal with our triggers, how we recognize what our traitor within is, and then how we put her, him, they away.
Right.
We can lead healthier lives
Right.
without repeating our self-sabotage.
And I think, when you said we can't change other people, but I just remember being brought up and societalized that way that I did have to change other people. I did have to keep the peace. Of course, no one says, you're the peacekeeper of the house. That's your job. And here's your job. Like we didn't have that. There were three of us in the family, and I'm the oldest. I'm very parentified. We're actually immigrants. And my parents had me as because I learned English faster than they did. So they had me translating things I look back on and say, I know they were doing the best they could, but there were some things that were not necessary for a child to be doing. Were not, I think, okay for a child to be doing. And it made me really think about that when I was doing some healing recently, saying, like, I know, like, I can hold both things and, that my parents were doing the best they could and they needed help, but also like, what the hell? It's like, why did you have me translating things for you and feeling like I had to be so responsible for so many things. Of course, being the oldest, I think that we're born with that feeling anyway.
Right, but it's up to the parents to say you may be the oldest, but you're still a child.
Right.
I am here to provide a safe place for you so you can be a child and you can
Yeah.
grow and you can learn who you are and the best you. And you do that with friends, you do that with your relationships with
Yeah.
everyone around you. And to be the parentified child takes away some of that. It takes away,
Yeah.
and it's a huge responsibility for a child to not only take care of the other kids, because it sounds like that was part of it, but and your parents.
Yeah. And that's how I really truly felt. And we had some family trauma. And so I felt like, trying to keep the peace and everybody be good and get good grades and just be a good girl kind of thing until I got to age 15 or so. And then I was like, you know what? Boys will give me more attention. They'll give me a different kind of attention that makes me feel better and like fills that need in me that needs to be loved. And that's just the way I saw in society that that's how you're supposed to be loved.
Well, the
And
trigger can be formed not just from parents and how you learn to cope in your childhood in your relationship there, but society can also
yeah.
help create that traitor within.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes you confused, right? Because we didn't have this information at our fingertips like we do now to understand what was going on. And I was reading it in magazines and, just always, I just remember it was very stereotypical, just wanting to be pretty and skinny and all those things. And that will make me more loved. If I do this, that will make me more loved. And of course, I grew up in a diet culture. My mom was always on a diet, that kind of thing. And I have no idea if she had pressure from her husband, my dad, excuse me, but I know I did. And I remember exactly my dad would tell me I looked fat or you seem fatter than you were last year. And it's like, I think back and I'm like, I'm also a growing child. I grow and things like that I held on to for a long time and made it part of my life. Like always, I look back at pictures of me and I'm like, my goodness, I was so thin and I just thought I was so fat because that was the culture around me. And so that just made me, if boys were giving me attention, if I was getting attention like that, now I just say boys because frankly, that's what they were,
Mhm.
if they were giving me attention, then that made me feel good. Like
Mhm.
just as I am, I feel good. And
And that's normal. I think any,
yes,
particularly women, but I think anyone would feel that way. Why, how could you not?
right.
Of course. And why would you not want to stay there, and get that
Yeah.
attention from them because you were getting it?
Well, yeah. But then, like going into college and I had a boyfriend, but then I met my ex in college and it's like flirting was just something you did. And because if I flirted and the boy liked me or, the guys liked me, then that made me feel good. And it was just a recipe for disaster, I think, when I'm now going to be dealing with a narcissist and they see like someone who's needy and flirty and stuff like this, like, oh, she is making it known that she's going to be something I can manipulate, or that I might have an easy time with, those kinds of things.
Well, they do. They watch and so people, you talk about empathy or lack of empathy with the
Right.
narcissist. They have cognitive empathy.
Yeah.
The manipulative ones, the ones that are, really good at that piece, have cognitive empathy, which means that they can look at a person and understand what they're feeling. They don't feel it. They doesn't stop them from acting in a harsh,
Right.
painful, cruel way. But what it does is it gives them the information they need in order to manipulate that other person. So it sounds like that's what happened with you.
Yeah, and I did see him do that with just the people around him and also with his now current wife who he groomed in front of me. I saw the way she is as a person. I'm like, when I started to understand narcissistic abuse after my divorce, I'm like, oh, it's no wonder he's with her. She was the same way I was. She's empathetic and all these things. It's these are all good qualities. We just have to be on guard of how people around us will try to manipulate us being empathetic, good people, giving, loving, ready to help a friend out. Those are not bad things inherently. It's
Right.
when they're being manipulated by others that can become dangerous.
Well, it's also like I talk about the traitor within, and the traitor within could be full of these good qualities.
Right.
But the traitor within has blinders on. So where in
Yes.
this situation, this part of you that's empathetic and caring and trusting and trusting and trusting again over and over again, or does things to keep the relationship steady, whatever it is, you don't realize it's in the wrong place. It shouldn't
Right.
it becomes it's your friend in the right places, but it becomes traitorous because it may, as an example, keep you in a relationship that is with someone who's being potentially abusive
Right.
because you are being so empathetic and so wonderful qualities, just in
Right.
the wrong place.
Right. He took advantage, and also not just him, other people in my life, because what it looked like is no boundaries.
Mm.
And so me just giving of myself all the time, oh, you're so generous and all that. And it's like, well, that I just didn't have any boundaries at all. And I didn't have the self-love that I needed to even set those boundaries and to say that's not okay. I started to get very angry and I didn't know what it meant. But what I understood later on as I started to learn about boundaries was I didn't have boundaries and people were stepping over where boundaries probably should have been. And that was making me angry. But I didn't know how to set boundaries. I thought boundaries were forcing other people what to do, and that's not what boundaries are. And so I didn't know how to do that. It was all confusing to me.
Boundaries is self-protection.
Right.
People get upset with boundaries, especially people when you do it against a family member, for example. But
Yeah.
boundaries is not, well, maybe for some people. I'm saying boundaries, I don't certainly teach that boundaries is for revenge. Boundaries is
Right.
self-protection.
Right.
It's to put you should protect yourself. You know,
Right.
it's okay.
Somebody said it's the door to get to you rather than a wall. And it's so interesting because that makes a lot of sense, because think about a relationship you have, and if you set a boundary with that person, you're saying to them, I actually want to continue this relationship, but this is how it has to continue with this boundary. And I've had examples in my life where they weren't okay with that. And so my decision was I left the relationship
Well, that's
because
healthy of you to do that because some
yes.
of us would then bend the boundaries or take them away. If
Right.
they try to do it, but then your trader would come in and say, okay, fine,
Yes.
I don't,
Right. And it sounds scary, I think, for people who are listening, maybe who don't have boundaries or have never done that, or they're worried about that.
Mhm.
Yes, some friendships went away. Um, but that's okay because the wrong people were in my life, people who didn't acknowledge my boundaries, who weren't okay with them, who weren't okay with me growing and changing as a person in what I think is a good way. They weren't okay with that. And so it's okay that those people leave your life because the right ones will have room to come in.
Well, I think people get scared they're going to be alone if
Yes,
or they're doing something wrong by putting up
of
boundaries.
course.
And
Yes.
it could be, like you said, it could be scary.
Yeah. And of course, people are going to tell you that it's wrong to set boundaries, but those are probably the people who benefited from you not having any boundaries.
100%. So where do you think you were taught to not set boundaries, and you were taught not to be angry, and you were taught to make things like, where did that come from?
I mean, definitely childhood. You
Mhm.
know, my mom has some childhood trauma, and so she was pretty angry. And I think nobody was really, I don't know, she was born in the 30s. Was anybody going to therapy? Who knows? And her trauma wasn't acknowledged by her family, and so I think it just bled into life. And so I was brought up in a home that was, like mom's crazy, um and she's angry and stuff like that, but I just think she didn't have the support she needed. And then I definitely married into that as well. Like I literally was imitating my mom and her life, and I think back and I feel bad about that, but I know that she probably didn't have the support. And so I just thought it was normal, of course, right? We just sort of continue our life or find partners that feel like home.
And
And
you also said you had a similar relationship that you saw your
Mhm.
mom act a certain way to your dad. Well, part of the Traitor Within is messaging and modeling. So
Okay.
you must have watched how to act.
Right. Yes, and how to keep the peace and all the things.
Mhm.
And when I think back of my childhood, I don't have terrible memories of my childhood. Um, but now as I'm healing and looking at things, I'm like, well, I mean, there were some things that were kind of messed up that could have been done better. But that's why I decided to make a change, and why I'm, talk to my children who are grown, and why we talk about all these things and what's okay and what's not okay. And I just decided to break the cycle because
Mhm.
it's just even though, yes, I went through a marriage for 33 years with somebody, and yes, my children were affected, we've had tons of healing to discuss it so that it doesn't continue.
Well, intergenerational trauma is real, and it's up to whoever it is. I mean,
Yeah.
you're doing it, I'm doing it,
Yeah.
so we don't, so it doesn't continue.
Yeah.
Because mine was also my traitor was formed by messing into modeling of my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother.
Okay. Yeah.
Best, and they were wonderful people. But that's part of how my traitor was formed. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you watched your mom.
Yeah. And my grandparents, since we're immigrants, my grandparents didn't live in the same country as us, so they only visited. And so I didn't know their relationship. But we also have to know that, women didn't have a lot of rights to even leave a marriage
Mhm.
until a certain point. And I don't know that my mom ever would have left. Um, but I just think that just taught me it's like you just keep giving forgiveness, and you just deal with whatever's going on around you, the chaos and all that.
Mhm.
And which I know my children are great, and they've healed a lot, and they're beautiful. My friends tell me like they're just beautiful, like people inside and out.
Mhm.
And they're like, that's because of you. And I'm like, even through the trauma, I was able
Mhm.
to do something, even though I didn't feel like I did. I really, because I was in survival mode.
Mhm. That is true. When you're in the midst of that, I always say that too, in mommy mode or survival mode, which is the same
Yes.
thing. You just
Yes, it
have
really.
to, right. It sounded like you gave them consistency and
Mhm.
love.
I did, even though I felt like I had a lot of anger. And so of course I was angry. I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then a newborn with special needs. And so I was tired and I was angry because I wasn't supported. I was actively being told I was a bad mom.
Um,
If only I would figure out a better schedule for myself, I could get everything done, everything could be done right. And I always thought that the issue was that he was comparing me to his mom. That's what I thought the bottom line issue was.
Mhm.
But now I know that, it's like when you have somebody who has these narcissistic traits, they're actively not going to support you.
Mhm.
It's part of the crazy making. And so I can look back on that. But let me tell you, that makes me sad that
Mhm.
I missed all those years with my kids not having a good mom because I was in survival mode. But they have forgiven me because I have apologized specifically about certain things that I can remember,
Mhm.
and they have forgiven me. And so, in fact, if I ever try to bring anything up, they tell me, we're done with apologies. Like,
Yeah.
we're done. And I was like, okay, but I feel bad about this. They're like, then go deal with it. But we are okay with you. Like, you're fine. And so I always encourage others that even if your kids are grown, they may or may not accept your apology. But if you can humble yourself and apologize to them for things
Mhm.
specifically, it might help your relationship. I know that people, this sort of not an epidemic, but this thing of like people cutting off their families and stuff, it's not just for fun.
Mhm.
There's things that are happening in families, and if the parents, like, they're still our kids, even if they're grown and in their 30s, they're still my kids. And so I just wanted to set an example and apologize.
No, I agree with you. And I want to just also touch on something because you talked about, those missing years. It's
Yeah.
also, yeah, I hope that you had time to grieve. I think grieving is really important. And I think one of the common points to grieve for many people who are survivors of
Mhm.
narcissistic relationships, even if they're still in it, but
Yeah.
they're learning to, or out of it, looking back, is to grieve all that time that was lost and
Yeah.
the loss of self
Yes.
during
That's
that.
exactly it. Yeah. No, I have not finished grieving that. It's a pretty brand new feeling I've been having. So I've been dealing with that. It still comes up, and I don't feel like crying on your show, but it still comes up
Mhm.
because, when you leave abuse, you start to get a lot of clarity. And so I feel like I'm just peeling back an onion and going like, oh, let me heal this. And I healed, 6-year-old Laura, and then I healed 15-year-old Laura. And now we're going to Laura is a new mom who was in survival mode and didn't feel like she had anyone to support her or tell her she was a good mom. And he told me, I can't tell you you're a good mom because you're not.
Well,
Things like that.
but
Because
he was keeping the power over you
he
because you had to
was.
rely on his word. You had to rely on him to tell
Yes.
you were a good mom because you didn't have it in you to know, you.
Right, exactly. And so, when I would go to therapy, she would say, tell yourself. And yes, I totally agree with that. But I also would think to myself, but I'm in a relationship with somebody who isn't telling me that. Why bother being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't even like me or love me, anything? So that was really hard to reconcile, all those feelings, because I was committed to my marriage. I had examples all around me of marriages that stay together forever. And I don't know, for good or for bad, who knows at this point? It's like, was everybody happy? Who knows? But everybody stayed together. So I didn't know anything else. And it's just what I thought I should do. You get married and that's what you do.
So in those 32 years you were married, if I
Yeah.
remember. So
Mhm.
in those 32 years, how did the traitor play a part?
Well, just always, I just would compromise myself for everything. I felt like the wording I got recently was being out of integrity with myself all the time for everything. It was everyone before me, if only to make everybody else happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really what I did in childhood, was like keep the peace, all those kinds of things. So I did spend a lot of time, what I would say is quiet, small, very small.
Hmm.
If I was too exuberant or and whatever word, he
Hmm.
would he wouldn't like that. I'd have a talking to when we got home. So it just was always my message that stay small and it keeps you safe. And that's,
Hmm.
what I did all my life. I don't do that anymore.
Good. No, I'm, but yeah, but that's a lot of years to undo,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
even rewiring your brain or however you want to look at it. It's a lot to, I mean, thank goodness, and wonderful, proud of you for
Yeah.
this.
Thank you.
I know it's not easy.
It's not. And when I got divorced, I thought, well, I haven't known who I am for 33 years. But as I started to unravel it, I'm like, nope, 55 years. Like I've never known who I am. Who am I? Because of course we in family systems and being in a church system and friendship systems, everyone has you playing a role. And if I didn't ever say, I don't want to play that role,
Mhm.
I got in quote unquote trouble, or people didn't like that. So I learned that well, if whatever I was assigned, I just tried to do. And so I'm still learning at 58. Who am I? What do I want to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? That's
So is it exciting, scary? What do you feel about this new normal, which is really
right.
yeah, feel.
Oh, it's fully exciting because I don't have that voice in my head, right? Which you think is your conscience, but it's not. It's the voice
That's,
of your abuser, right? That's
that voice is
yes.
the traitor within.
Yes, exactly. That's think that you have those voices of oh, so and so isn't going to like it if I do that. And so, so you have that voice that's talking to you,
Mhm.
telling you these things. So now I don't have that traitor anymore, like telling me, no, you can't do that because this person won't like it or society won't like it or whatever. And I did have that when I first started thinking about doing the podcast. People were like, you shouldn't talk about it, things like that. And I was like, but why? I don't understand. And nobody could give me an answer, which is what I dealt with all my life. There's no answer. You just have to be quiet.
Mhm.
There's no reason. You just have to be quiet. Stop asking so many questions. And now that's what I do for a living.
Right. Well, I was the truth teller, so I was the
Yes.
black sheep of the family,
Yes.
you know?
We usually are, right?
Yeah. I bet I mean, I'll have to do research on this, but I
Yeah.
bet if you talk to a lot of survivors of narcissistic, abusive, romantic relationships,
Yeah.
a lot of the women would have a lot of similarities.
Oh, yeah, I think so. So many people I talk to, they may not necessarily be like the firstborn or that kind of role, but
Mhm.
yes, very similar things that somehow they took up the role as, black sheep, truth teller, things like that that cause problems. But
Mhm.
now they use it, they're using it as a superpower.
Yes. The lucky ones.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yes, the lucky ones. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I do think, as you had also come across, that the people, around you who understand the safety of not speaking, because,
Right.
uh, not internal safety, but the safety for keeping their secrets, you were warned, and you were warned for many reasons. One is that's probably how they are taught as well, but they
Yeah.
don't want their secrets out,
Right.
and I'm sure some of them had good intentions, wanted to keep you safe. The trader within has good intentions, wants to keep you safe,
Right.
you know,
Right.
but it's scary for others too. I mean, to
Yeah. I mean, it does take a lot of courage to speak out, but I try to help women if they feel like they want to tell their story. It's so interesting to me as I get DMs and things in my on Instagram, and when I share something, they'll say like, "I really want to tell my story." What is it in us? We
Mhm.
want to tell our story, especially if we've been in abuse. In abuse, your whole story is lies and silence, and it
Right.
it's just that's the way it is all the time. So there's
Mhm.
something about it. There was no way I could be quiet. I tried. There was a period of time where I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't be talking about this. So many people are telling me not to talk about it. So I considered it. I think I considered it for a day. And I
Mhm.
was like, I have to. I don't understand why we have to not talk about it. But then I did find so many people on the internet talking about it.
Mhm.
And the messages I get that say, thank you for sharing your story. I don't feel alone. That's it.
Yeah,
That's why
each one, right, is worth everything.
everything.
Mhm.
That's exact because if I would have had that,
Mhm.
I would have felt better because I didn't know until I saw people talking about it.
Mhm.
I felt very alone because everybody around me was telling me not to talk about it. And then I started to see I had people were like, well, I was in abuse. This is who I listened to. So I'd go listen to them.
Yep.
And it just opened my eyes
Mhm.
to, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, I'm not crazy. Because you feel like you're the only one, especially when you're in abuse, you're made to feel like you're
Crazy.
you're crazy and your experience,
Well, the
it's
gaslighting is big, and
oh,
so
so big.
what being part of this community shows you is that it's the gaslighting was gaslighting. That
And it's their and it's their main tactic. So of course you feel crazy.
Mhm.
Every single one of us has felt crazy. And
Mhm.
that's just what they do. It's just all that's what their tactic is to make you feel crazy. And I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And I didn't want anyone else to feel that way. And so I've never, for the last almost 3 years, I have never been this person. I used to never say anything. Even if I agreed with you on something, I would have probably never told you because I was afraid of what, somebody in my life who was controlling me would say to me, like, you shouldn't have said that to her. But I was agreeing with her. Well, you shouldn't have, for whatever reason, insert some arbitrary reason. So
Mhm.
now I say things with reckless abandon, and I know that it's not my issue if it makes you uncomfortable.
So once I was on someone's podcast and they said to me, "What is recovery to you?"
Hmm.
And I said, recovery to me is for me, because it was romantic relationships where I was silenced and where I was,
Yeah.
is being able to be me. And to do so, to find me, I had to get rid of the traitor within because
Yes.
other things, but it was all those voices, all those, part
Yeah.
of me that was doing things that were not letting me be me.
Yes.
And I think that sounds like you too. And
Yeah. I mean, definitely with that. Yeah. To like, what does it even mean to, I can just be me? Well, it's to have that freedom to say anything and know that there's not going to be somebody who,
Mhm.
punishes me for it.
The punishment was now the so this is talks to you about the cognitive empathy, how they could have that. So for me, the worst punishment I could have is abandonment connected, so silent treatment.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Me
that
too. That was
exactly
mine.
what was
Yeah.
used, yeah, that was used against me was the silent treatment. It was beyond cruel. You
I
know,
was talking to a friend the other day about that. We hadn't caught up since I got divorced and she wanted to hear everything and so we were talking and she was telling me a story like that and I said, "Okay, so you have that abandonment wound." And she's, "Oh yeah." She's that for and that for sure. Yeah. Anytime I had the silent treatment, oh my gosh, you might as well have killed me.
he explained to you, and I think you would get this. I don't know if you get this far, but I was in therapy with this person, and I said to them, I would rather be punched or hit than be given the silent treatment. And I had been in a physical abusive relationship, so I could
Mhm.
say it with
Yeah.
it wasn't even hypothetical.
Right.
Much rather be hit because then it's over.
Right.
Silent treatment is pure torture and it would throw me into a panic.
Mhm.
So the idea, this is a great example of someone who is narcissistic. They know they're upsetting you. They know
Yeah.
it's your worst nightmare and they're doing it.
Yeah.
And
And he would use it as almost like a therapy tool. They say if we need to take a break, we should just take a break. And so I would be in
they're
the middle of my rebuttal or whatever it was, of the fight, and he would stop me halfway. I could not even finish my sentence, and he would say, "I have to take a break." And that was it. And then and I'd say, "Well, how long?" "I don't know." And so that was the
that's
complete
the problem.
control.
Because in therapy, you could say, I would let you finish first, of course, but you can say, you know what, I need to um, go to the store and get,
Yeah.
I don't know, a milkshake. I'm just sorry, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll be gone 30 minutes. I just
Right.
need some space. I'll be back. That's okay. You can do that.
Yes, exactly.
Open ending piece of, I don't know when,
Right. It
that's
was all about control, right?
all
It's
about
just
control.
all just about the control.
And dismissive because he's like, stop talking now.
Oh, it was always. And the weirdest thing for me when I think back, there's so many things I have forgotten about, but they're starting to come back because I've been doing a lot of healing and I'm getting a lot of clarity. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, that. So I just probably need to write them all down, then write another book. But the telling me to shh,
Mm-hmm.
you're being so loud. And it wasn't that. And I'd be like, I don't understand. Like, there's nobody here. We're not in a public, like over and over, the conditions were never good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me always, of course, felt like what you have to say is not important. So what did I learn? I learned that why bother talking? He's going to fight me. He's going to tell me to be quiet. He's going to abandon me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just learned to not do anything. And then, of course, the last 2 years of our marriage, she said, "You're no fun anymore."
Oh, interesting.
Well, of course I'm no fun anymore. I've shrunk myself down to a shell of a person who doesn't speak or do anything fun because I am ridiculed or punished every time. So what's the point? And so I was just slowly fading away as a human.
I think that's also a common
Yeah.
explanation, a complaint. I'm trying to think of the right word, a common
Yeah.
part of being a victim of a narcissist, and that is slowly fading away to losing ourselves.
Yeah. Because you do kind of give up because everything is a problem. I just remember everything was a problem, even agreeing with him was a problem because he'd be like, "Well, you didn't used to think that way." Well, God forbid I didn't used to think that way, and now I do think that way. It's like you couldn't have a discussion, say, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I see your point of view." He'd get mad at that. Why do you see my point of view now? It like it was a manipulation or something. It's like
Oh, I
project
know
much,
exactly. It's always about projection, and
right?
there's a no-win. He made it impossible for you to.
Yeah, exactly. And then out the other side of his mouth, he's saying, I wish we were closer. I wish you would come sit in the backyard with me and let's have a glass of wine and chit chat about our day. And it's like, I stopped doing that because I was just in trouble every time. Like, let's sit down and talk about all the things that are wrong with you. And so, and then you'd be like, well, my love language quality time, and you don't spend quality time with me. And so I understand the love languages. And somebody was talking about this that
They work in healthy relationships.
yes, exactly. They can be weaponized and they were weaponized in mine.
I'm always, I do this live every Friday, and
Okay.
I do a lot of stuff in narcissist, but then every once in a while I try to do stuff not a narcissist, like let's talk about love languages. And we've done a few of those. And I always have to preface what we're,
Yes.
or even using the I statements and all that. I'm like, that works in healthy relationships or healthy attempt, ones that can be
Yeah.
healthy. These tactics or whatever, these do not work with narcissists. They just,
Yeah.
because
It was
it's because
uh,
no matter what you do, they're going to see it as criticism and they're going to attack you.
right, exactly. And it was futile. And we went to therapy a lot of times. I went to therapy on my own a lot. And then we would go over the years, we would go for marriage counseling and you're not supposed to if you know you're in abuse. I didn't know I was in abuse. There's an imbalance of power. So I didn't know. And
Well,
it didn't work.
they go for a reason. They go to
Right.
either get another flying monkey or they go to, and if you don't
Yeah.
go to a therapist without narcissistic training, then you could be destroyed. It actually, the therapist can become a flying monkey as well.
Yeah. We never had good results in marriage counseling. I don't think anyone ever saw it. I was the one who had things to work on by the time we left. Um, he would say, like, she's very picky about this, that, and the other. So I went home working on my OCD, and I'm like, I
Yes,
just, like that. It was so confusing.
here, and I've said it many times, when anyone is in a relationship with a narcissist, or someone with high narcissistic traits,
Yes.
um, then they must see a trauma-informed therapist, in my opinion, and a therapist who is trained with narcissistic abuse,
Yeah.
because you will be potentially abused by a therapist. And this is my field, this is your field, I
Yeah.
have to say that and proceed with caution, and even individual therapy, because I went to a therapist.
Okay.
I was for a short time with one of my relationships, and the therapist, I was depressed. I was put on medication. I should, instead of
Yeah.
discussing I was literally put on medication instead of dealing with what was actually going on in my marriage.
Mhm.
So yeah, I will.
Same. Same. I mean, that happened to me a couple of times. And it just seemed like every time it was like, he's such a good man and blah 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 and why are you so particular and all this and the thing that when I look back now it was like I couldn't even pinpoint what the problem was because when you're in narcissistic abuse it's so confusing and it's a boiling frog syndrome where you don't even know you're being boiled alive. And so it was hard to pinpoint. And they would just make it like, well, he's a good guy. Okay, well, whatever. And the last one told me he was very handsome. And what did I have to complain about? And I,
There's that anyway, even if you were in a healthy-ish relationship.
yes, exactly. And I'm thinking, my gosh. I wasn't being physically abused, but what if I was being physically abused? Because I have to tell you, excuse me,
Bless you.
there was one time when we went to therapy and I was very dead serious that if he didn't stop, behaving a certain way with this woman, that I wanted a divorce. Or I don't think I said divorce, but I kind of talked about that I didn't know if I wanted to go on, things like that. And we got in the car and he's like, "Did you want a divorce?" And I got in trouble. I got yelled at for an hour before we even went home from therapy, even though I felt like in therapy, she was saying, "Do you hear your wife? Your behavior with this woman is not okay. Are you listening to her?" I felt like she was on my side and she was helping the situation, but I got in trouble because I brought it up, which is their MO. If you bring it up,
Hmm.
you're in trouble for that. And so that's manipulation. I didn't realize that. I just thought I should have never brought it up. Right. That's what they want. They don't want you to ever bring anything up. Don't bring it up.
Right. I mean, your ex actually went to therapy. Many narcissists will refuse to go because they don't want information to be out there.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was part of the good guy persona of, I'll go and it'll just prove that she's the problem. Because like we would sit down and the therapist would say, "Tell me why you're here." And most of the time he's like, "I don't know what's wrong with Laura.
Wow.
She's going crazy. There's something wrong with her. I'm really concerned about her." And then we would spend a long time talking about that. And then by the end, I'd be on meds or we would have
He
accomplished
looks like
nothing.
he looks like a hero. He
He
looks like
does. Thank God you brought her in here. Thank God you brought her here because now she's going to be okay. And he looks like a hero. And it makes me so sad. There's such an imbalance of power. And now I know that, but I didn't know that then.
important for what you're doing because you're teaching people that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, like I said, there is a common thread through all these relationships.
Yes, there really is. It's wild to me. I'm like, do they have a secret handbook?
Like, well, they just limited, that's all. It's actually very different. They have to keep up they can't face their true self.
No.
They have to do this dance. They've been doing it, I'm sure, since childhood, and they will do anything. And they're even delusional. So I remember some of the issues I would have would be trying to say the truth over and over again. Like, how come you don't see the truth, the truth, the truth? And I
Yeah,
didn't understand. I was so caught up in the moment. I didn't understand that they were never going to see the truth. They couldn't
right.
see the truth. It's not even just manipulation. They don't see the truth.
No.
They can't, because if they do, they'll see who they are.
Right. And that's the thing that I didn't understand at first. I didn't really figure out what was going on until about 3 months after our divorce. I'm like, he's not going to sit around going, "What did I do wrong? And how did I just lose my marriage?" And I don't think he's not going to do that. I'm over here like in my bed crying, journaling, therapy, exercising, everything I can think of
Good
to
for you.
heal. Yeah, what just happened to me. I'm like, why did I just get a divorce? I don't understand how we couldn't make it work. I never understood how we couldn't make it work. If only I could explain myself a little bit better, then
That's
he would
all of us.
understand.
That's all of us.
Yeah. Yes, of course. And there's,
We do what we do because people know,
yes.
my whole spiel is that I've been a psychotherapist. I graduated with my master's in 1988.
Okay.
Still kept going from one relationship like this, to
No.
more than one. Um,
Yeah.
so I was married for most of my life. I got married for the first time when I was 20, but it was with different people. So I kept
Yeah.
repeating it. So my whole spiel is, if I can do it with all my training, I was a psychotherapist, I am a psychotherapist, with all my training, anybody can get into this, manipulated in this relationship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm very cautious. Even I don't date right now, but I've been on a few dates and I'm very cautious. And then also, I try to, that's why I try to talk about it. And I try to, I guess, warn others about like, we don't need to rush into another relationship because I know we've been trained to have that external validation, but we need to work on our internal validation, or we're never going to be okay. Number one, being alone. You got to be okay being alone. And then, and you don't have to be completely healed. I don't know that I'm going to be completely healed, but you have to get pretty far down the road to where you can see the tricks.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to talk about it like the fairy tales and the whirlwind. I saw something on, a post from, people or something that said like blah 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 behind their whirlwind romance. And I'm like, danger, danger.
And because I didn't do the work after each relationship, I
Yeah.
literally would went from one to the other. I couldn't see it. You need to get distance.
Right.
Um,
Yes, you
I
do.
love you need to get distance to understand what's happened.
You really do. And
Yeah.
it's just, I know that we've been taught to have somebody in our life and there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to love yourself. So that way you don't put up with those backhanded compliments and oh, you don't park on I saw this the other day. You can't park on my street because then my ex-girlfriend might drive by and see your car.
And then
Excuse me? Like the amount of red flags in that sentence. Like,
they'll accept it. They
yes,
want that, them to like them. It's,
yes, exactly.
I
And
get, I've been there.
yeah.
I
There's,
get it.
I'm sure AI will get trained that if you, is this a red flag? You can type it into AI.
But the thing is, and as you know, they're not always so obvious in the beginning.
Yes, exactly. Oh yeah, for
Have
sure.
different love languages. I always say my love language is to be for someone to be vulnerable, and then I can help them. So I don't need the stuff. I don't need
Yeah,
the jewelry. I mean, yeah, sure, it's nice, but that's not what draws me in. Mine
right,
was that person being vulnerable and me, connecting with their vulnerability and then them letting me help. So that was my love language.
right,
And I'm not going to and then I'm going to see their vulnerabilities and I'm going to be empathetic about it. So whenever they do anything that's
right.
not so cool toward me, it's okay because they had a tough childhood and they had you know and I think I'm not alone again in
Yeah, but this what it made me think of was like say you're on a date and you're meeting this person, don't show all your cards. Don't tell them, "Oh yeah, my love language is whatever," because they'll use it if they're a manipulator. Okay? If they're a manipulator, then they're going to use it
data.
against you.
They're collecting data.
Yes, they're collecting data. So just I always say you have to take everything slow. You can't. I just remember at the beginning of my relationship with my ex that it was just he told me he loved me really fast. And of course, I was swept off my feet. Oh my gosh. Because I was starting to feel that way too. But the other thing too is I was having sex with him right away. And that threw all my chemicals wonky. And so, that's hard. You cannot make a good decision with those chemicals running through your body. And so I was really swept off my feet
Mhm.
and I was bamboozled that way. And of course, I'm not going to blame myself, but I just know that that's the patterns that I saw.
And they don't usually show their true colors until much
Right.
later. You're in
Right.
already, then you're in and you're committed and you've been taught as you said, people didn't get divorced and you're in, you're committed. And someone gave me great advice, which I've talked about.
Hmm.
I followed it when that person gave it to me, but it wasn't something I had always followed. And it was a priest that told me, don't fall in love with potential.
Oh, I love that. That's so true. Yeah.
And so when you start seeing some red flags or you start seeing you're like, oh, but they're gonna be, and if I love them enough, they're gonna
Yes, if I love them enough or fix
child
them
that
or
they didn't have, they're gonna be. I mean, I've played those.
oh yeah, I've done that too. And and that's the other conversation too. It's like, are they sharing that kind of information with you? Like even on the first date, maybe their childhood trauma, all their exes are crazy, things like that. You just have to,
If it's real.
I mean, you just have to write it down, even if it's true.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to be the one to fix them or, you know, rush to help them. Any of those things. I just always say, just slow down. I wish I would have slowed down, but I don't know. If I wasn't healed, I wouldn't have seen, I
I
don't
think
think I would have seen anything.
I've been healed because I with my fourth husband now. This is a very different experience, but
Yeah.
each one I went very quickly, and then there was one I went very slowly, and
Yeah.
I still wound up in the same type of relationship.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think your point about healing is the most important point.
Yeah, I think so too, because like I was saying, I'm like, even if I would have gone slow, doesn't matter. I was still
Mhm.
seeking external validation, all those things. And I probably would have been like, are we getting married? Those kinds of things. Because to me, getting married meant I was fully loved. That was the ultimate thing. And that's not it. You know what I mean? And I didn't have that internal validation. But then I was never really taught that. I wasn't modeled that. So I had to learn that. And now it's hard to teach it, but you just have to go out of your way to really work on it. Some people won't look at themselves in the mirror. And so we do, those are the things I like to encourage women to do, mirror work. Just look at yourself and tell
Yeah,
yourself you're beautiful.
yeah,
You know,
I
it's
agree
not,
with you. So
yeah.
if you could look back, and you would talk to your, let's give you, you can give me different ages, but I'm just going to throw your 10-year-old self, your 50
Mhm.
self, your 30-year-old self. What would you say to that person now? Your wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done the work with the 10-year-old self, and she needed a hug. And that she's loved just as she is right this minute. She doesn't have to have the love and attention of a boy
Mhm,
to be complete.
mhm,
She's loved and whole the way she is right now. That's what I would tell all those ages. All of us, that we are perfect just the way we are. And when you think about when when I just said that, if you got a twinge, whose voice was that
mhm.
telling you that you're not? Think about that, because that's where the work has to be done. It used to be it used to be my mom, it used to be my ex, it used to be my dad. It's not anybody anymore. It's every once in a while, there's a couple of things and I'm like, oh no, and I got to work that out. But it's not the same anymore. There's leftover. Oh my gosh, I've been around 58 years, so there's always work to be done. But the majority of those inner voices, those are mine now. That's my own encouragement. I hear my friends, talk to your friends, my gosh. And if you don't believe how much you're beautiful or you're loved or any of those things, listen to your friends, your good friends who are encouraging you and lifting you up. Live off of those, even if you don't believe it right now.
And that inner voice that's good to you, the good voice is your inner friend, your friend within, not
Yes.
your traitor within.
Yes. Love it. I love it. I love this work that you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you. It's not, I see, because I get feedback, not only helping the person who talks about their own traitor within, but it's actually, because I'm also a hospice social worker. And when I do coaching
Mm,
with people, it's actually help people understand their own parent, for example, who had
yeah.
passed away and didn't get a chance to do the work with them. They're like, oh my God, they had a traitor within, and that's why they acted that way.
Yes.
It gives them a sense of, because I think it's important when we discover our own traitor within to have compassion toward oneself.
Yeah.
Also, it allows us to have some compassion toward, again, you don't have to forgive, I'm not talking
Right.
give them, or if they acted a certain way that was abusive or whatever, I'm not telling you what you should
Right.
do with that, but just an understanding.
Right. And that's the thing, is I can hold both of those at the same time. Even with my ex, I know that he had issues and trauma, and I can hold empathy for that 6-year-old little boy, but I
Mhm.
don't for the grown man who chose to abuse rather than get help.
Right.
And so I didn't know that I could hold both of those at the same time. I thought I had to do one or the other. And so I stayed stuck in unforgiveness and anger for a long time until somebody was like, you can you can feel both those things. I'm like, what? I
Mhm.
do. I feel both of those things. So, and even with my parents, I totally understand it. And then also, my phone's not broken. You can still call. But, like those kinds of things that where there's issues there. And then I try to keep it's like, I understand, but, so it's a work in progress on that one for sure.
Peace, because people are complicated, situations are complicated. You can have
Yeah.
more than one thought about someone, a person can have different parts of them. And I think it's important to note that it's less confusing for sure.
Yes, that's for
But I
sure.
think also what's important too is you can have empathy for someone, and that doesn't mean you have to be in a relationship with them.
Yes. Yeah. Because, yeah, I think people think that they also have to forgive them like in person or something. No, forgiveness is for you. And if you want to forgive or not forgive, I always say you don't have to forgive to start your healing journey. So I think it'll come along with you for the ride. Forgiveness, I think, is just a byproduct of healing. But I thought, well, I have to forgive and then I can start healing. No, I needed to start healing right away, or I'm not ever going to forgive if I can't heal. So I've just learned so many things along the way. It's like, there's no rules. There's no rules for this.
And just like with grieving, you can have 3 steps forward. You may have a couple steps back, and not to
Yeah.
get scared, because healing is hard, hard work. Facing things that, particularly if you're going through, like facing your previous traumas, for example,
Yeah.
hard, hard work. And I don't advise necessarily doing it alone. It,
Yeah.
but it's hard work, but important work. And when you come out the other side, what a great life you can have.
Yes. That's for sure.
So, before we end, is there anything that you want to say? Don't have to. It's only
No, I usually tell people that just to remember that they matter and their voice matters. And, you deserve to be doing the work and finding out who your traitor within is and talking to that and getting, fixing that so that you can heal and move forward in your life.
thank you.